Aloha, everybody. Thank you, Sandy and Dennis, for singing that song. It was my request, and I think it's absolutely perfect for these days. And here we are in our third week of live streaming, wishing that we could see all of you. And I'm remembering my grandma used to say, if wishes were horses, then beggars would ride. So instead of wishing we could see you, I'm going to know that you're all safe and well, and we'll all be back together again soon. Well, I have to admit that I found it a bit ironic that this month's theme, the theme for April, is bright beginnings. The comedian Gilda Radner once said, "I wanted a perfect ending. Now I've learned the hard way that some poems don't rhyme and some stories don't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Life is about not knowing, having to change, taking the moment and making the best of it without knowing what's going to happen next. Delicious ambiguity." I'm remembering this as I focus on imagining brighter beginnings for all of us. And when I read this, I remembered Reverend Mark saying, as he was experiencing his beautiful homes being covered with lava, he said, "I'm living in the world of I don't know." But living in delicious ambiguity has led Mark and Ryan to embark on a new adventure, and they're now living in a beautiful home that they built in the Pacific Northwest. Now, you and I all know that this was not on their radar. They were not making plans to relocate to the mainland. They loved being here in Hawaii, but they've embraced the change that life has brought to bear. We're all living in the world of I don't know right now, or delicious ambiguity, as I now choose to phrase it. And it can be very uncomfortable there. And I admit to having intermittent feelings of fear and anxiety, and I don't have a piano to pound on like Mr. Rogers did. But like Bonnie said, I feel that it is so important to name and acknowledge these feelings. Some of you may be familiar with the beautiful poetry written by Mary Oliver. This is her poem called Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles across the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal that is your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I'll tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to you and to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. Now, I read this poem as a preface to this next poem that I'm going to read, and this poem was inspired by wild geese, and it's called Mary Oliver for Corona Times. It was written by a woman named Audrey Cousereau, and it really touched my heart. Reverend Libby sent it to me a few days ago, and it touched my heart when I read it, and it gave me permission to sink into my feelings without rushing to dismiss them. She writes, "You do not have to become totally Zen. You do not have to use this isolation to make your marriage better, your body slimmer, your children more creative. You do not have to maximize its benefits by using the time to work even more, write the best-selling Corona diaries, or preach the gospel on Zoom. You only have to let the soft animal that is your body unlearn everything that capitalism has taught you, that you are nothing if not productive, that consumption equals happiness, that the most important unit is the single self, and that you are your best when you resemble an efficient machine. Tell me about your fictions, the ones you've been sold, the ones you sheepishly sell others, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world we know is crumbling. Meanwhile, the virus is moving over the hills, suburbs, cities, farms, and trailer parks. Meanwhile, the news barks at you, harsh and addicting, until the push of the remote leaves a dead quiet behind, a loneliness that hums as the heart anchors. Meanwhile, a new paradigm is composing itself in our minds and could birth at any moment if we clear some space from the same tired hegemonies. Remember, you are allowed to be still as the white birch, stunned by what you see, uselessly shedding your coils of paper skins because it gives you something to do. Meanwhile, on top of everything you are facing, do not let capitalism co-opt this moment, laying its whistles and train tracks across your weary heart. Even if your life looks nothing like the Sabbath, your stress boa constricting your chest, know that your antsy kids, your terror, your shifting moods, your need for a drink have every right to be here and are no less sacred than a yoga class. Wherever you are, no matter how broken, the world still has a place for you, calls to you over and over, announcing your place as legit, as forgiven. Even if you fail and fail and fail again, remind yourself over and over, all the swells and storms that run through your long, tired body, all of them have their place here, now, in this world. It is your birthright to be held warmly in the family of things, not one cell left out in the cold. Now, not only did this poem give me a strange sense of comfort, I also learned a word that I've never heard before, and it felt good to learn something new and to be able to capture it in my often spinning brain. The word is hegemony. I never heard of it. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, hegemony is the dominance of one group or state over another. This dominance could be economical, political, social, or military. During the ancient days, hegemony was used only in a political sense, but its scope has now extended to encompass social and cultural realms as well. Hopefully, we are clearing some space from the same tired hegemonies as a new paradigm is composing itself in our minds, one that is based on connectedness and grows from love. In another poem that was posted online, the last line stated, this is Mother Earth talking, "The air, water, and sky without you are fine. When you come back, remember that you are my guests, not my masters." I pray that this idea becomes embedded in the hearts and the minds of all of our citizens of the world, and that we never forget the many things that have been taught to us during this dramatic pause we're all navigating together. I think we all have had bouts of fearful thinking. I know that periodically I need to remind myself that the fear of the coronavirus is worse than the virus itself. It can be more deadly. Because when we're in fear, a reactive part of our brain called the amygdala takes control of our actions, and we enter into a fight, flight, or freeze mentality. This is what causes people to strip all our shelves of toilet paper and hand sanitizer. And when we're in this reactive state, our body starts to produce a steroid called cortisol to help us handle the stress. And guess what cortisol does to our immune system? It weakens it. We all have bacteria and virus and fungus and a whole array of foreign particles that we are exposed to every day. But it's our immune system, of course, coupled with our spiritual beliefs and our practices, that prevent us from getting ill. When we're stuck in fight-flight because of worries or anxieties, our bodies waste a ton of energy. When I become fearful or anxious and my brain starts spinning, or when stress threatens to undermine my sanity, I am so thankful for the spiritual tools of our teaching that can bring me back to center and to my spiritual poise relatively quickly. That is, when I remember to use them. So I was talking to our friend Glenn Pearson the other day, and you guys know Glenn. They spend half their time in Reno and half their time here. So I'm talking to him on the phone about specific things that need to be done and completed to ensure that we get our final inspection. And specifically, we were talking about, of all things, what has to happen with our septic system. Yes, our discussion rapidly disintegrated into discussing bodily wastes. It didn't take long for my stress level to rise, and I made Glenn laugh when I said, I need to hang up right now and pray. And that's what I did, because that was the truth of what I needed to do. I hung up the phone and I prayed, because I know that creative intelligence responds to septic system needs as perfectly as it responds to other needs, because there is no big or small in spirit. And God bless Bonnie for putting up with my spinning head, my mega texts, and my frantic calls about computer glitches when she's trying to shop with her daughter Diana. Because she gets to listen to the crazy Cathy, the one who should have been still and prayed before, not after, writing the texts or making the calls. We're all learning. Our overarching theme this year has been 2020, the year of clear vision. And we know that seeing clearly is important, and our spiritual minds are able to envision much more than the naked eye can see. Ernest Holmes stressed that we all learn through repetition, and we know this is true. So as we walk this path of delicious ambiguity, we need to ask ourselves, what am I repeatedly filling my mind with? And is it helping me to see clearly? We all need to be mindful of what the group mind asserts is normal right now, and move ourselves to the spiritual realm where we're called to look higher, deeper, and more clearly at the nature of things, so that we may rise above this fear that's running rampant in the collective unconscious. This is the time to use our imaginations to the fullest, envisioning the future that we wish to create. In his book, which was called The World Could Be Otherwise, the author Norman Fisher wrote, imagination is not escape from reality. Imagination deepens and enriches reality, adding texture, depth, dimension, feelings, and possibility. Our teaching encourages us to use our imagination. It assures us that when we do use our imagination and we do employ the techniques of visualization, that it helps us to better see through the confusions of life to something greater. Here's one example of the power of imagination. I know most of you have heard about stories like this, but this was a recent study conducted at Bishop's University, and it measured the strength gains in 3 different groups of people. The first group did nothing outside of their usual routine. The second group was put through 2 weeks of highly focused strength training, which focused on one specific muscle, and they were to do this 3 times a week. The third group listened to CDs that guided them to imagine themselves going through the same workouts as the exercising group, and they also did this 3 times a week. I bet you can guess the results. The controlled group, who didn't do anything, saw no gains in strength. The exercise group, who trained 3 times a week, showed a 28% gain in their strength. No big surprise there. But the group who did not exercise and instead participated in visualizing exercising experienced nearly the same gains. They experienced a 24% gain. I know. That's cool. And then there's another study that was conducted by Harvard University in 2007, where they took a control group of the housekeeping staff and didn't tell them anything, and the other group were told that what they did on a daily basis qualified as the amount of exercise that was needed to keep them fit and healthy. They made no changes in behavior. They just kept doing their job in the same way as always. 4 weeks later, the housekeepers that participated, that had heard this message, that they're doing their jobs created the same amount of physical strength as not, they found lowered blood pressure. Body fat percentage was lowered, waist-hip ratio was lowered, and body mass index was lowered. The control group, of course, did not experience any of these changes. So I tell you this just to remind us about how powerful our imagination is. It can bring about huge changes in our lives and our worlds. And this season, indeed, is the perfect time to envision bright beginnings. I count among my blessings the past 3 days. Now it's raining, but for 3 days prior, it was sunny and beautifully warm, and I enjoyed it so much. And the longer days and the warmer days are such beautiful metaphors as spring comes. They're metaphors for the motion of bringing the inward outward. When we're inward during the quiet months of winter, it's a metaphor for examining and reflecting and educating ourselves and growing in our understanding that spirit is always part of who we are and expresses as us. And that moves from the inward to the outer expression of oneness. It leads us to examine and re-examine old beliefs and paradigms about other people and the way the world works. With the coming of spring, we can think of flower bulbs as a wonderful metaphor for this, because, bulbs, when they're out of the ground, they look like an icky old onion. They're not pretty. And yet, with care and nurturing, after the inward time of winter, they expand and they grow and they bloom into something beautiful and magical. And everything that was needed for this to happen always existed within that bulb. Like us, they are whole, perfect, and complete unto themselves, just awaiting the perfect time to bloom. I love this quote from the Talmud that says, every blade of grass has an angel that bends over it and whispers, grow, grow. I think we all have angels that are whispering to us during these trying times, grow, grow. On April 8th, we celebrate Passover, and I have to give a little ad for Rabbi Rachel, who's doing a virtual Passover. She will be doing an online Passover this year, and she's even partnered with Sweet Cane Cafe, who will be making the Passover meal kits that can be picked up. So if you're interested in participating with Rabbi Rachel at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, April 8th, give me a call and I'll provide the link for the information. So Passover is a story of the timeless journey to freedom. When Moses leads the Jews out of Egypt, the miracle happens, the parting of the Red Sea happens that enables them to cross over and lose their Egyptian pursuers. But then, of course, they got to spend 40 days trekking through the Sinai desert before they finally reach their homeland in Canaan, now known as the land of Israel. The story of Passover, of course, celebrates emancipation. And on a metaphysical level, it symbolizes freedom from old thought patterns and beliefs and ideas that have limited our experience and expression. And today, of course, is Palm Sunday, which is the lead-in for next Sunday when we'll be celebrating Easter, which also metaphysically symbolizes the death of old ideas and the resurrection of a new life. Charles Fillmore, who along with his wife Myrtle Fillmore founded Unity School of Christianity, defined resurrection in his metaphysical dictionary as the raising of a person's mind and body from sense to spiritual consciousness. Old, limited personal relationships do not continue in this resurrection. Those who are being raised into the Christ consciousness will gradually, as their growth in understanding makes it possible, let go of all that's personal and selfish in their relationships and come into the larger love, the love universal, where all who are in God's keeping are fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers. The divine law is fulfilled by the love universal. That's a beautiful thought. I hope that we can all know that we are all evolving into this love universal. We're all on this path together. Let's walk it peacefully and harmoniously, using our imaginations to visualize the better days that are coming. Ram Dass wrote these wise words: "As you walk down the street, you can tune your receiver into the world on any number of channels. Each way of tuning creates a very different street, but the street doesn't change, you do." Let's agree to tune our receivers every day to the channels of healing and oneness. So I want to close with this truth. The creative essence of the universe, or all that is, as Bonnie likes to call it, the one power and one presence we call God, is fully present at the point of your consciousness. In this moment, in this very now moment, in the midst of it all, resides a being of immense magnificence, of limitless power, and of transcendent grace. If you're still unclear about who that being is, take a look in the mirror. But do not see only the strained features of a weary body exhausted by change and grief. Look into your own eyes and go deeper, deeper into the certainty of the strength that lies beyond what you believe you possess, deeper into the knowing that you are not simply expressing the divine, you are the divine. And that's the truth, and so it is. We'll see you next week.